to the Epic Real Estate Investing Show, where we show people how to invest in real estate so they can retire early. And if you want to use real estate as a vehicle to retire early and do it faster than how most are going about it, then you've got to deal in off-market properties. And to find off-market properties, you have to market to private property owners directly. And one of the most reliable, scalable, and time-honored ways of doing that is through direct mail. Yet a lot of real estate investors think direct mail marketing is dead. So I invited someone to the show today to discuss that very subject, to answer that specific question. Is direct mail marketing dead for real estate investors? So she's a new member of the Epic family, by the way. As our direct mail marketing coach, she's got a ton of insight, a ton of statistics and data that she uses to help real estate investors maximize the results from their budgets in their specific markets. And so I just pulled her most recent review actually off the website. Let me show you real quickly if this works. Hey, there we go. Working with Emmy was such a breeze. She is knowledgeable of the direct market I am working in and offers great suggestions backed up with statistics to prove them, but ultimately the decisions were mine to make. It was a pleasure working with Emmy, and I expect to build on our business relationship. So thank you for that, Richard. And so without further ado, I will bring her on. Miss Emmy Garretson, welcome to the Epic Real Estate Investing Show.
Hello.
Hey, how are
Thanks for
you?
having me. I am great. I'm
Very
moving into my
good.
house. I'm a busy lady.
Super. So first and foremost, let's just maybe a one-word answer. Is direct mail marketing dead for real estate investors?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That was 2 words, but I liked it better than my suggestion. So what is the state of direct mail marketing? I mean, how's business for you?
We grew by 400% over last year, and we were one of the only companies that I know of that actually grew during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare.
Over 400%. That's significant.
Yep. And the fact that everyone thinks that direct mail is dying has been really good for us, because I've heard you say it before, like, do the marketing that everyone else is thinking to not be working, right?
Right.
And with the restrictions on texting and stuff like that, everybody's kind of swarming now to direct mail.
For sure. You know, when COVID, when we went into the lockdown, everybody resorted to texting.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew everyone stopped doing direct mail marketing because
Mm-hmm.
I own a bunch of rentals and I'd get
Yep.
people's direct mail all the time.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I started getting a bunch of text messages and there was no direct mail. So
Right.
that's exactly when I turned on the direct mail faucet and started direct mail
Mm-hmm.
marketing, because I knew no one else was doing it.
Exactly. Yep. And
Right.
there's always certain markets that people respond better to direct mail, and which is, why people call me, because most companies don't quite understand that.
Mm-hmm. And you work for REI Print Mail, and
Correct.
you help us out over here.
Yep.
Explain to me a little bit about REI Print Mail, what they do, and why they're so special.
Yep. So we actually have a parent company that's been around for 30 years, Graphic Connections Group, and we started out with just marketing, banners for companies, like those swag bags, logos, all those types of things. And then about 14 years ago, we realized that there was a need for that marketing in the real estate investing industry. And so we hired a couple people and quickly realized that direct mail was the way to go, because it's the leads of people calling in are way more golden, if you will, than reaching out to somebody and hoping that they need to sell their home.
Right. So you get the motivated seller, so to speak,
Yep.
to call the real estate investor rather than them
Yep.
having to
Exactly.
initiate that
Yeah.
communication, right?
When someone picks up their phone and reaches out to you, you know that they mean business, or at least they're curious enough to have that conversation.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I think one of the bigger questions that I will get when the subject of direct mail marketing comes up is
Mm-hmm.
what's the best list? How do you know who to send your direct mail to?
Mm-hmm.
So explain to me how you what are the best lists right now, and how you work through that with each client to find the best list for them.
Yeah, great question. I mean, a lot of it depends on budget. So someone who's like, give me your best list, I'm going to say it's probate.
Probate.
It's 100%
Okay.
probate. Yep. But that data, and we have a third party partner that we have partnered up with to get that data. They physically go down to your courthouse and pull the data and they scrub it. If you're getting that sort of data online, it's typically 2 or 3 months old. and everybody else has hit it by the time you actually get to them. So,
Right.
but you get what you pay for. So if you want fresh leads, I mean, it's super expensive, but again, it's worth it. So I would say some of the best data out there is probate.
It's probate.
You know, a year ago, had you asked me what's the lowest hanging fruit, it was vacant. And as of late, within the last probably 6 months or so, that high equity absentee list has been doing really well.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
so is that across the board in general, or is it
it
market
is.
specific?
Yeah, no, it really is. That is kind of our go-to, if you will. And then if I have someone who comes in and they're like, I'm in X county and there's tons of data, that's when I get really excited, because then we can take my kind of common filters and just really button them up so that it's as niche as possible. But niche could still be 5,000 quantity, depending on how much data we have to start with. But my favorite is out-of-state absentee, unless you're in Florida or a place where there's a lot of Airbnbs, or like, you know, the snowbirds in Florida, like I just said. You know, if you can do an absentee with a vacancy, that's also a really great list. But across the board, I would say the high equity absentee.
High equity absentee.
Yep.
And the probate, right?
Yep.
Okay, because I mean, we had a few different ones there. Because there's so many different lists that you can choose. Should people just ignore the other lists?
No, I mean, I do like sprinkling in. So for example, you know, if I did like an out-of-state absentee, I'll always put some vacant in there. Or, you know, when I'm doing a campaign with someone, and we can go through exactly what a campaign looks like, but we're very strategic about it, and we want to find that control mail piece that people are responding the most to. Once we find that, then that's when we test different lists. You never want to test a mail piece and a new list at the same time. If it doesn't work, or if it works really well, you don't know, was it this or this? So right. I do like to start with the list I know to be working, find the control piece, and then test the list as we go on.
Okay. So yeah, that seems like a good transition to go into what does that building of the campaign look like, and then what is I guess the testing would be part two. What does that testing look like?
Yeah. So for example, someone calls me, and usually they'll call, you know, whether it could be you saying, hey, you know, it's a new student, and, you know, go call Emmy, because she's going to help you go from knowledge to action. Because like you always say, you're not an investor till you're a marketer. But typically people will call me when it's just a desert. Like it's dry, no leads. They're with another company and they've spent, you know, $5-6 grand, gotten no return, you know, no calls, no deals. So when someone calls me, I tell them, so, you know, I ask them, like, what's your market? What are your goals? Where have you been? How many deals do you get on average? Where do you want to be in 6 months? What's your budget? How much time do you have? Because some people have full-time jobs, right? So they're low on time, but maybe they have a good budget, or it's swapped where there's no budget, but they have a lot of time. In which case, and we can talk about this later, I might discuss other forms of marketing, right? But when they call me, I'll say, you know, do you have a list pulling source? If they don't, I can pull the list for them. So you have the data and you have the mail piece. Both are equally important. You know, sometimes I'm on a phone call with someone who's like, hey, I have a list. And I'm like, well, when did you pull it? 6 months ago? I'm not doing it. I'm not going to spend your money on a great campaign that I know will work with poor data, because the whole point is you want to find those people who don't necessarily want to sell, they need to sell. So that when they get your mail piece that they know, you know, they get the postcard that we know works in that market, they're just like, oh, thank God I got this, because I'm in a pickle, or I just got divorced, or whatever. And so I'll pull the list, and typically it's really never less than 2,500 quantity, honestly, because the whole point of direct mail is to get a deal. It's not to, you know, check my box and say, hey, I just sold 300 postcards. That's not how we roll as a company. I've turned people away who want to send lower quantities kindly, but more because I don't want them to spend money when I know they might get 2 calls, because you typically need about 25 phone calls back from a campaign to close 1 deal.
Okay, so what is the minimum quantity someone should send to expect a result? Very good result, I should say.
It depends. So most markets that are like not super saturated, like Iowa or Mississippi, they're going to get about a 1% response rate. Now, again, that's a total average. I don't love speaking in terms of averages, but you need a starting point.
Right.
And so if we get above that, awesome. I mean, I've had a mail piece like this one, I'll show it to you all later, get like a 2 or 3% response rate.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in places like that, like here in St. Louis, you're a 1%. It's between 2,000 and 2,500 because, like I said, we need 20 phone calls. So if we send 2,000, you should be getting 20 phone calls. California, it's a 1/4% response rate.
Okay.
So you need to be sending about 6,000 mail pieces. But you know, at the end of the day, it's the cost per deal that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the cost. People get caught up. They're like, I want this for 30 cents.
Right.
And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, I want you to send a postcard that's going to get you the deal, because if you don't
Right.
get a deal with that one, it became really expensive all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, that cheap one is expensive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, and then also, if you were going to do a quick flip on a property, I mean, in St. Louis, you might make $5,000-$10,000, but in Los Angeles, you make 20, 30, 40,000.
100%. Yeah. And so I tell people, you know, what's $1,000-$1,500 to turn around and get 10 grand. That's a pretty good day. Or to your point, in California, it's not impossible. It's just the bar of entry is a lot higher, but then the payoff on the back end is really big. So to me, it's a cost per deal. How much are you spending, and what are you getting on the back end?
Got it. All right. So we've got kind of identified like what the list that you favor and that you like to target, and then kind of a minimum mailing number or mailing pieces that you should be sending. How often should you be sending those?
Yeah. So typically, like I was kind of talking about the strategy before, we'll take one list and we'll hit it at least 3 times.
Okay.
Usually people need to be touched 3 to 6 times. I have people who call in and say, I want to do a 6-touch campaign. I'm not going to say no, but I will recommend that we start with 3 touches, reconvene, and basically every month do 3 different mail pieces that I know to be working in that market, each with a different phone number for tracking. So when John calls in, you're not like, well, hey, what postcard are you looking at? You'll know that's postcard number 2. And so at the end of those 3 months, or 3, at the end of those 3 months, we hop on the phone and I say, you know, how many deals did you get? What's your pipeline look like? What sort of follow-up do you have to do? Let's talk about this, you know, this situation or that situation. And by the way, which mail piece performed the best? Because there's always one that does better. And then we take that one, and that's the one I was talking about with the control piece. So as far as how often do you mail, it's typically once a month for 3 months. And then if you're still getting a ton of calls by month 3, we can knock out 1 or 2 more, you know, touches to that list if need be.
Right. When is it, you know, I guess, let me ask this question first. And I have my own answer because I get this question a lot, is like, you go ahead and you launch your direct mail campaign and nothing happens. I mean, the phone rang once or twice. When someone comes back to you and says, hey, what's up? What's your response to them?
Gosh, that's a great question, because that does happen occasionally. Sometimes in that situation, it's someone who's tried it one time and they expect, I compare a lot of things to personal training because I used to be a personal trainer. And so I always say, if someone comes and says, I want to lose weight, it doesn't happen in 1 month. You know, it's consistency and sticking with it and trusting the process. That's why I usually like to reconvene after 3 months, because you can't really know exactly what the results are going to be unless you've done it, because oftentimes people need to see it more than one time. So maybe month 1 you get 2 calls, maybe month 2 you get 20 calls. But it's certainly worth noting. But after 3 months, if there are no deals closed, one of my questions is, well, how many calls did you get? And they're like, well, I got about 20 calls a month. And I'm like, well, then we need to have a tough love conversation, because this may be a closing issue, you know, but let me help you figure out how to fine tune that.
Right. So they got to send their expectations have to be, you got to send the direct mail for at least 3 months, right? Because you need to do that just to even get some data to know if there is something to change or not.
Yep, exactly. And, you know, and I'm pretty good about making sure that people understand that you need to be able to afford it for 3 months without getting anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you're not going to get deals in those 3 months.
Right.
I've had people get in 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. You just don't know. Every situation is different. But I like to set that expectation, because if I don't, then someone can run out of money in the first month, and then that's money wasted. I'd rather them know up front, this is what it's going to take, and then we can always wait, or they can wait until they get a deal a different way and then pour into direct mail.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got we know what list we're going to use. We know we got to commit to this over a certain period of time, to get a certain amount of data back to know what adjustments we should make, if any. When it comes to the mailing pieces, one thing I like about your company is that you've got a bunch of different ways to get the receiver's attention.
Yeah.
And we know that's what it's all about. That's what direct mail is all about, is
Exactly.
getting the person's attention, right?
Yep.
So do you have some stuff that you could share with us of,
I do.
of how you guys do that?
I get really excited about it. It's kind of dorky. So it's funny. There's some markets like Columbia, South Carolina, where small postcards have been doing super well. Also San Antonio, Texas. Something like this does really well up in the Northeast as well. And things like these little doodlies and having, what's this called? Highlighting, again, is going to draw someone's eye to that postcard. Something like this is cute because it looks like it's just a little, it looks like a little note card. Works really well in the South, kind of those smaller towns. Also adding where it says thank you and then Joe Investor, instead of having thank you, we oftentimes change that to God bless. So you can make those changes. I would do that in the South. I would not do that in places like New York. And then I know you all have seen these types of postcards, the Street View. We were the first ones to actually to do this, and then people followed suit. But the pink, sometimes people complain, they're like, I don't want to send a pink postcard. And I'm like, well, how often do you see pink mail? It's not really often. You see a lot of yellow, a lot of white, but you don't see a lot of pink. And so the whole point is we need to stand out, and this physically stands out from the rest of the mail. Here's your small guy. Here's your postcard under the competition's postcard. Yours is sticking out, and they might look more clear at that one. We also have a feature called reverse texting. So it says text that short code to the phone number. So it's another way for them to reach out. It's almost 2022. Heaven forbid people should have to pick up the phone and have a conversation. That can be really intimidating to a lot of people. And so that's why this reverse texting works so well, because people can show interest without feeling that like they're committing to a conversation. And so when each property, like each postcard has its own short code. And so when someone gets this and they text the short code to the phone number, two things happen. First of all, they get a text, they actually get a text from you. So it's automatic. You could be on a walk with your dog, and it's a text response that we composed together when we launched your campaign. It can even have a blind offer in there. We can set up however you want, but it'll say, hey, John, it's, Susan, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm busy right now, but I'm going to give you a call as soon as I can. That's the first thing that happens when they text the short code. The second thing that happens is that you will get an email notification letting you know that John Smith at 123 Main Street just texted you, and you now have the property, his property address, his name, and his phone number. You didn't have that phone number before. And that's really important. So you can then go look up his property, do a little research, call him back, and keep in mind, he's already heard from you in his mind. So it buys you time to then follow up and have a conversation. You look like an expert too, because you're referencing the fact that you know where his address is and you're commenting on his house. You could even pick up the phone and give him an offer without looking at the house. So these do extremely well. That's another one. These are great for people, the reverse texting, who work full-time. They can't always just answer the phone when someone's calling in. So that's something important to note. These other mail pieces, something like this, invitation style. I love this. Rather than using a white, sorry, Matt, I got super excited about this. Rather than sending something like this, which is fine, I would rather open this than this. This looks like, oh my gosh, Julie invited me to her wedding, or it's a party. And so this has a really high opening rate. Something like personal and confidential, that will also get someone's attention. Priority Express, I would open that one. And then this one, fake check mailer. Looks like a check from the government. These did great around COVID. That's probably why we continue to grow, because people are watching out for their checks. And even if you thought it was fake, there's still that chance that it's real. I'm telling you, everybody can take the 5-10 seconds to open it. And inside it has a blind offer for the person's property. Now, again, it's percentage of market value. So it's a conversation starter. It's not a real check or anything like that, but it's a conversation starter. And last, this is the trifold mailer I was talking about that is getting up to like a 2-3% in some areas. I had a guy in Nebraska send these out 2,500, and then he called back. He said, I want to do 10,000 now, because he got such great responses. So those are my mail pieces.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super. So that was one of the, like that one with the check, like even that
It's
tax time
crazy.
is coming up, right? So it's like
It's
this would be a
crazy.
great time when people looking for their refunds and stuff.
Yep. And in fact, I'm actually sending a lot of these with red handwritten on it, because it looks like those Christmas cards that you're waiting for with updates about your cousin or your best friend.
So how customizable are the mailing pieces?
You can change whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. And then you just do the mass production like that.
Exactly. And I can talk through that with each person, because, you know, if it's a husband and wife, like, for example, one of your students from the summit, he's married, and we changed the I to we, because we put both of their names in there.
Perfect.
Yep.
Well, great. Then that's why you would probably want to schedule some time with you, right?
Absolutely. You know, and it's everyone's situation is different. You know, so if I just have time with you, I can ask those questions, and we can find a good strategy for you. Even if it's starting out, I had a lady, I had her start out with Driving for Dollars because she couldn't afford direct mail.
Right.
And I had her put basically a Post-it note on the doors.
Right.
She got
there you
deal.
go. That's super. So you got alternatives. So that's why I want everyone that I recommend that comes through our REI ACE program is to at least spend some time with you to see if there is a workable fit there for direct mail.
Yeah.
Because it really is one of the ways that you can not necessarily scale your marketing, although you can, but you can just kind of set it and forget it. You can go and just kind of book it for the next 3 to 6 months, and then just kind of let it ride. And then you can focus on other income generating activities, other marketing activities, while you know that's already working in the background for you.
Yep.
And so that's why I highly recommend direct mail, is just for that purpose alone, because there's days where we don't feel like working or don't want to work, or it's just something comes up, we're sick, or some a family emergency comes up and we can't go out and generate those leads. But if you got your direct mail consistently being sent, then you are always generating leads.
Yep. I just had that conversation with a guy today. He's killing it, and he'll sporadically send mail. And he called me today. He's like, girl, I got to get consistent. So we just set up a 6-month campaign, and he's just like thrilled. And he upped his budget by like, I think it was like 10 or 20,000. No.
For sure.
Like 15,
all right, let's talk about that, because you've thrown out some big numbers like that. What is like kind of the minimum number someone would be thinking they would need to do in case that number scares them?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, if I have someone call me and they're like, I don't have a huge budget, I can do one of our best performing mailers. I don't have it in front of me, but it's a small handwritten postcard. It's actually kind of hard to read, which psychologically, for whatever reason, I think people focus in on it more. I'm happy to send 2,000 of those if we're in an area where I can, like I was saying before, take a county and really button in the data so that it's maybe it's an absentee vacant and they have 3 other properties, or it's absentee and tax delinquent, and they're 65 and older. There's all these different pain points. So if we can dial the data into 2,000, I'm happy to send that, and that'll cost about $1,000 to get 2,000 out there. You can get up to 20 calls with that.
Cool. So you need a little bit of a budget, but not a huge one. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Perfect.
Well,
all right.
And everyone who comes in through you gets 10% off printing on their first campaign.
Very good. Yeah. So if you wanted to work with Emmy, or just kind of have this free session with her to see how this works, the best place to go for that is to go to callemmy.net, and that'll put you right on our calendar. You can pick a time that's convenient for you. And that session is free. If you decide to move forward, then the mail, obviously there's an expense to that, but it's totally optional. And if it doesn't fit, Emmy's got some alternatives that might be a better fit for you right now, and then you can come back and check with her later.
Yep.
So
and you always have access to me, just so you know.
Perfect.
People have my cell number, which I regret sometimes.
Well, that's because we start here. So to make sure.
Right.
So go to callemmy.net. That's EMMIE. Callemmy.net. Her time is free. And then her experience, though, is priceless. All righty. So, Emmy, thank you very much for being here today.
You are so welcome. Yeah.
And
have a good rest of your week, guys.
For sure. And I'll see you soon. All right. Take care. All righty. So if you found this episode valuable, who else do you know that might? There's a good chance that you do know someone else who would. And when their name comes to mind, please share it with them and ask them to click the subscribe button when they get here. I'll take great care of them. All righty. God loves you. So do I. Health, peace, blessings, and success to you. I'm Matt Theriault. Living the dream. Take care.